Thank you for checking out Value Driven Life. I'm your host, Coach Chris McMahon. And today on the podcast, I am super excited to sit down and chat with Mike Doehla. He is the founder of Stronger You that has helped more than 50,000 people. He created one of America's fastest growing companies and then, well, he sold it. He's a dad, he's a husband, he loves Legos. And if you're not following him on Instagram, there are some very impressive Legos on there, and his daughter seems not to destroy them. So that's also impressive. He loves good food and experiencing as much as he can. Thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks for being on the show.
Dude, thanks, Chris. I'm excited to be here. Happy to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. I am an open
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. So first of all, I think actually what I want to talk about right now is I saw if this episode is going to come out in a couple of weeks, but folks will be able to go back on your page and check this out. It's your 6-year anniversary of actually stepping away from, I believe you were working in finance before in banking. You were able to step away and go like full time into working with Stronger You. And I wanted to know maybe what that feels like for you to actually be able to look back and think back on that, especially after helping so many people, just so
Yeah,
folks can get an idea of this experience.
it's all very weird to me. So just to back up a little bit, I grew up not knowing what the heck I wanted to do with myself, right? Went to community college because I didn't know where I wanted to go. I didn't want to go to like a big school and have my mom spend more money or take out a bunch of loans. So I was going to do electronical engineering, and then I realized I didn't like math, so that wasn't a great idea. So then I just bounced around in community college, major to major, ended up doing business management. Took me 4 years to graduate because I messed around a lot. Then I got into banking, was in banking for like 6 years. Then I jumped into HR because I finished my degree online in human resources. Then I was in HR for a while. And then I realized I really enjoyed the fitness industry. I was a hobbyist myself, wanted to help lots of people, and figured maybe I can try to get into it somehow. So I started training people in my garage. No one really cared. So I balanced the thing that a lot of us do. We work full time, maybe somewhere, and we help people on the internet, which is a really, really fortunate thing to be able to do these days. And I balanced the online nutrition coaching with Stronger You and my full time HR job for 13 months. And my now wife was like, hey, like, I think it's going to work out. If you want to quit, I think we'll be okay. And that was kind of when we first started dating. So she had a lot of faith in me early on, and luckily it turned out. So 6 years to the day is when I had my last day of work at my real job. And it feels really weird. I didn't know if it would work. I saved a bunch of my paychecks because we didn't have direct deposit, maxed out my 401k, made sure that I could make the leap, and it worked out. And it's all a very crazy story because I'm not any like special super smart dude. I'm a pretty normal guy that just wanted to help a crap ton of people, and I figured out a way to package up all the things that I think people needed to worry about with nutrition, and ended up basically selling the basics and clearing the air for people. And then, we've helped 50, 60,000 people. We've created not just in Stronger You, but many of our clients actually got into the field because we introduced them to this stuff. And we've created over 100, 200 careers in the field. And that's crazy to me. I wasn't supposed to do any of this.
I think
Sorry, that
the
was
thing that
long.
no, actually, no, it wasn't that long. I know in your mind it might have felt long, but for folks listening, I think it's important because the general person who is going to be listening to it is someone who could very well be a generalist. They could just
Mhm.
enjoy doing health and fitness, and it might be the thing that they're working a job that could be incredibly stressful, and they have a family, they have a wife or a husband, and they do this thing on the side that feels almost like it's my me time. But maybe that's actually the thing that brings them joy. And I think what you're talking about here is being able to like finally be able to go all in on the thing that's suddenly been like this special thing that you do. It's suddenly like, folks who say you can't build a career on a hobby, it's the other side of that. It's like you totally can. It's going to take time. You can't just jump in and be like, all right, this is the thing.
Right.
Especially when you have other mouths to feed, when you have someone else who you're sharing a life with. For me, that's my life right now too. It's like I lost my job. I went all in on coaching. I have a 2-year-old. I have my wife, so it's not really about playing around with it. It's about understanding why it's so important, how we can actually help these people. And the thing that I want to highlight here is I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about how to make time to actually create these new habits. Because if you were doing your other job and you're already balancing, we've spoken before, you're like, yeah, I was coaching people out of my garage. I was coaching people on my phone. I was doing X or Y before there were any apps to really do all this stuff too. It's like, how did you make that time within your schedule to even start to do an endeavor like this to help other people?
Yeah, so it was a buddy of mine that works with us, Nick Sorrell, who may be an awesome guest for you too. Super smart guy, super creative guy. He actually made me realize why I was able to do it. It was because I kind of had to. So like when I was starting out and right when I was quitting my job, I had a ton of clients. And balancing that with my full-time job was kind of easy for me because I knew I had to do it. And I thought I had to do it because it was a super important priority to me because if I didn't do it, the alternative was really, really bad, which was work full time in something I didn't like and not help a lot of people. So for me, and it's super cliche, right? Like if something's important to you, you'll make it happen. Obviously, there's a million factors that are pulling you away from these things, whether it's biology with the food stuff and time, family, obligations, whatever. But if there is something you want to accomplish, you have to figure out how to work it in some way. For me, it was easy because I knew I had to do it. So I just would allocate the time. I would try to almost like activity bundle things. Like if I was eating lunch, I was working on my cell phone. I was working later. I was working earlier. I would literally hide in the bathroom or the attic of our office and answer clients' questions. So that doesn't seem fun to a lot of people. Like it's kind of a crazy sacrifice. And to think about me hiding in the bathroom and just replying to people about protein shakes or something is kind of funny. But if we're trying to help people get healthier, and they don't have time, I always tell people think about where your time is going, whether it's like sleep, work, entertainment, family stuff, and see how you can bundle some of that stuff. Like if you want to get healthier, maybe you go for family walks, family activities. Maybe you cook with your kid and your partner, and maybe those foods are healthier options. So don't think of everything so separate. Think of where these buckets are, where your time is going, and how you can balance other things in them. And then it can become a priority and it can become easier for you. So I think that's the hardest thing. And when I was starting out, I was probably that annoying younger fitness professional, even though I started in my 30s. That was like, oh, we all have time, right? And then you start to realize the more you help parents and people that are different than you realize that we don't all have the same time. Yeah, 24 hours is 24 hours, but my 24 hours are different than Mary, the mother of three, who also works full time. So telling those people that they have time is probably the dumbest thing a fitness professional can do. What you want to do is ask them where their time is going and then help them plug in the habits into these buckets that work for them. And also, we have to talk about perfection, right? Everyone is so consumed with being perfect with this stuff. And I think we need to give people more permission to not be perfect, but still be good enough. And I think when we do that, I don't know, we just relate to our members or clients a little bit better and they start to see the results they want.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up about perfection. I was just actually working on an article I was writing, and it's this idea of perfection is just the practice of quitting, like a lot of things.
Mm.
That's really what it is, because if it's never just right, we're more tempted to just up and stop. And I'm sure you've seen this. I've seen this with clients with nutrition more often than even going to the gym. It's like, this thing is entirely on me. If I'm going out and I don't have what maybe someone will say, like, I don't have the level of self control, or I don't have the willpower to maybe do this, whatever the perfect idea is, like, well, F it. I'm
Yep.
just done. That's the cycle that everyone goes on. And then they find some other diet that's going to heal that problem or fix the thing or balance their hormones or make them right.
Yep.
All the
Yep.
claims out there. When in actuality, what a lot of nutrition coaching is like also like awareness and self-compassion and being able to apply these things not in a petri dish,
Yeah.
like
It's
being able to right.
to me, nutrition coaching is almost nothing about food, which sounds weird, right? Because people have this like thought that everybody kind of reacts different to every food and amounts and all this stuff. And it's really like, for the most part, food does what food does for all of us. We need a specific amount based on our activity and preference and lifestyle. And beyond that, if there's no, I don't know, like allergies or things like that, you're probably okay. And I think, I was joking about it this past weekend with some friends that it's kind of our parents' fault, right? They all told us we were special. So we think it's the same thing with food, that like chicken's going to do something different for you than it does for me. It's like, well, the body's just going to break it down into amino acids, blah blah blah. So it doesn't really matter. So I think when we simplify this stuff, we're really just, the food is kind of an afterthought. It's like, how do we get people to make the right decisions to eat the right amount in the mostly nutrient dense foods that they like without feeling guilt and shame around cookies, you know?
Yeah, right. And that's the big part of this conversation that you were bringing up just a second ago. Like, let's say someone's value is like family, and it's like I only
Mhm.
get this X amount of time with my family. Am I going to prioritize like my health and fitness or my nutrition in this time, or am I going to, do X or Y with my kids? And I really enjoy what you brought up is like, no, 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 no. They're allowed to know what you're doing. They're allowed to be involved, even if they don't want to eat particularly what you're eating. Like, it's like,
Right.
no, we can make fun versions of this, or we can figure it out. Like, I know you have your patent pending on your Mike Nuggets, but
Yep. Yep.
like things like that, like my son, he would devour that. So even though, let's say if I was still a practicing vegetarian or a vegan, like I'd still make it for him. Like, and I'd still prepare my stuff. It's like, it's, it's just getting the other people in your life involved, seeing how they enjoy it. And then suddenly you're like, oh, there's reward, there's
Yep.
feedback. Like, it's not just me on this. It's suddenly I have this community or this tribe that's also with me on this journey, because
Right.
you can feel incredibly alone as you're trying to make any of these changes. And the alone factor is usually what brings you back into the closet, grabbing the bag of cookies,
Yep.
and then you feel guilty about the cookies, even though the cookies aren't a bad thing. That's the I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, 100%. I'm big on talking about it like this. Whether you're on a program and your family isn't, they're kind of on it as well, because they need to support you and you need to have those conversations and ask for help. And they have to understand that they may need to make some changes as well. And it's often the husband, right? Because dudes are a little bigger, they burn more calories. Maybe they can get away with snacksidents and eating out a little bit more than a smaller woman. So they're the ones that are like, oh, please, please, just let's go out to eat. Let's do this. But a meal out for a bigger dude might be, I don't know, 65% of their daily caloric needs. For the smaller female, maybe it's 110%. So it doesn't hit the same. And I think that's where we need to be more supportive with our partners and people on these programs, because if we're not, they're not going to do well, and they're not doing it to be selfish and not go out to eat with you or not drink like you used to. It's because people just want to feel better, and the spousal support or the partner support is so important to that. Even friendship groups, work groups, things like that. So if you are struggling with food, bring your people in and tell them you need help. Talk to them about it. Just say like, hey, this is really important to me. I want to feel better. I want to be healthier. I want to be around a lot longer. I want to increase the chances of that. Can you join me on this journey, or can you support me? And here's what I need. Here's what I'll do for you. I love you, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah,
Just got to
and
talk about it.
I think that's the important thing here is like just literally opening up and talking about it, because it can feel so much like maybe I've coached clients where it's been like maybe this is their umpteenth time trying this and they feel that if I say something this time and it doesn't work again, what will they think of me? And the way I try to frame it, I don't know how you try to frame it, is like, what would you tell, like, if your son or daughter, like your kids trying to learn how to read and they are struggling still and they're trying to get through a book and they come to you with a book again and they're still struggling, you'd be pretty damn supportive of them and you would help them, right? You wouldn't say, "You're an idiot. Why are you," at least I wouldn't say that as a parent. I hope someone's parent wouldn't say, like, "Why are you even trying this again?" And it's the same thing with your we'll just stick with nutrition right now because fitness, that's it's the same, but at the same time, it's not for some people. Um, it's like, yeah, the people who you would probably wanna tell are the people who are going to be supporting you. Like, they want you here longer. Like, everyone wants you here longer, regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on with, like, the belief if, like, weight loss is healthy or unhealthy, whatever you want it to believe. The research out there says, technically, if you're not obese, you have a greater likelihood of not having all-cause mortality. Black or white, that's really what it is. There's no if we exist in the messy middle too, that's literally like I will agree with that 1000%. I will not go against that, especially as someone who has type 1 diabetes. Like for me, it's like, yeah, if I was like 80 pounds heavier, my doctor appointments would not be as smooth as they are. And I would not be able to keep up with my son or do fun things. Like I can look at it that way too. So it's like, how do you begin to have that conversation if you're afraid of having that conversation? That's the complicated part, I think, for some people.
Well, I think we're all so worried about hypotheticals that actually never come to fruition. Like life is
Mm,
just worry, which it's what is it? It's all biology, right? Like we're programmed to be on guard because if, hundreds of thousands of years ago, if we weren't, we're getting gobbled up by some animal or some disease or some thing, some threat that does not exist anymore. So we still worry, but we worry about things that probably aren't going to happen. And I always think like, well, what if a year from now, or you're still going to worry about the same thing? All you had to do was rip the band-aid off, have the conversation, probably would have went better than you expected, and then you'd be able to move forward. So
I think yeah, that's the scary part for people is like, I don't know how this is going to go. And the only way to find out is to actually say it, is to actually try it. And I guess the next part of that conversation is like, okay, the person is on board. They're coming with me on this journey. Do I tell them that we have to throw everything away? Right? Because this is, I was listening, I can't remember who was talking about it, but they were basically saying, like, if you go and you tell your partner, hey, I'm trying to be healthier, we have to throw every single thing away. Like, we cannot do this any longer. You can't have this. The likelihood of them going with you on this journey is no, right? I'm not going to do that. And probably a large source of arguments, and so the concept of compromise has to come up. So, Mike, do you have any advice for someone who would be trying to maybe do this? How to create some sort of compromise so you can feel as if you are being successful and you are going to be able to move in the direction you want to move?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to the whole perfection thing. Like the person doing this approach needs to know that they don't have to be perfect, and their partner or support person needs to know that as well. So maybe if you're eating out every weekend, all nights, maybe you do one or two. And then when you do, maybe you order, you specifically, the person trying to lose the weight or whatever, makes the decision that supports their goals in some way. So I think that's really it. The conversation has to happen. It's give and take, and that's why people get a little offensive about it. They're like, "Wait, this is your diet, not mine." But it's like, no, it's everyone's life though. So it requires your support. And it's not that they don't want to see you healthier. They don't want to give up their pleasure for your pleasure. And it's not, it sounds like it's a selfish thing. And maybe in a way it kind of is, but it's not a conscious selfish decision on these people's parts. So they have to understand, and it happens with kids a lot, right? Like the parents are like, well, my kids want this stuff. And, we won't get into giving kids all the junk food all the time, but if the kids are eating nothing but junk, it probably is our fault as parents. So we have to clean that up in some way. And, if a parent can't handle the snack foods that their kids like, they have to get them out of sight in some way. And I tell people maybe put them in a cabinet higher up. And so it's not on the counter inviting you to the party constantly. That's right. It's like if you have a friend that's like, come to my party, please, please, please. After a while, you're just going to say, okay, okay, even if you don't really want to. And that's the same thing with these foods. People leave them out everywhere and they're so delicious. We can't deny that. And they just invite you and you finally crack. So if someone in your family or friends or work or whatever has all these foods that you can't manage well around, try to put them out of sight a little bit. And I can almost guarantee, based on my experience and common sense, that out of sight, out of mind does work for food.
Right? It does. It really does. And you know what's funny about it is, okay, so that's the low-hanging fruit. We move, let's say in this instance, the one I like to give is like cookies, because my wife has a sweet tooth. As a type 1 diabetic, my sweet tooth really, I've learned kind of like, yeah, that doesn't work for my blood sugar as well. So for me, my choices are different. But if we leave the thing of cookies out, yeah, it's really hard. So the other example that I usually give is, all right, let's go to our favorite bakery and we'll buy like two cookies. You know, you have the two cookies and you really enjoy that, and we can walk around while enjoying it's a little different. So the other end of the spectrum though, the cool thing that starts to happen, or not, the more work that starts to happen that can be helpful is you suddenly realize, okay, I don't have the cookies here. What's starting to pop up that I want to grab the cookies? And this is the part you were talking about where it's not really about the food. It's about why that's the first thing I think to grab when I come home, or after I've had a tough conversation with someone. Like, why is it the cookie that I'm going to grab? What do I do in this instance?
What's
I
the
don't
we're
know.
like
Yeah.
searching for pleasure, right? It's like we get something from the cookie outside of the taste. It's some sort of pleasure, maybe it's a memory, whatever. And that's I think where I challenge people's thoughts a lot of times. It's not always well received because someone is like, "No, I'm hungry. I want the cookie." And it's like, "Well, if you didn't get the reminder that the cookie existed, you would have never even thought about it." So I'm proving to you right now it is not the cookie that you wanted. It's something else that you want. And we have to think about how difficult and crazy life is for a lot of people. Maybe the cookie is the most pleasurable, enjoyable part of their day. And we're telling them they can't have it anymore. Of course they're not going to be happy about that. So what do you fill in there? Do you phone a friend and have a cool conversation? Do you play a video game? Do you go on social media and talk to your friends? Do you watch a funny movie? So think about what it is you want. Think about if you're always jumping into these foods that set you off track, think about what you get from them because you are getting something. And I'm the same way. I like this stuff too. My wife is an amazing baker. We always have something delicious around, but I just don't think of it as this super special rare thing. It'll be there another day if I skip it. So I just always think like, what is this not void, but what is this pleasure you're trying to get and can you get it somewhere else? Maybe not. So work it in if you can.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting concept. This idea of, okay, well, I'm never going to get this opportunity again. You know, a lot of it is scarcity mindset around that stuff. It's like, if I'm technically being healthy now, right? Because we're going to deem, if I eat cookies, I'm not healthy any longer. If I'm not going to ever have this opportunity, and I should definitely partake in this as much as I can, right? I was listening to an episode of the Stronger You radio, and you were sitting and talking with Derek Stanley, and you guys were talking about like the concept of like every weekend is an event, is like a party, is like a special thing that happens, and you want to partake in that. And this is part of that conversation too, because it's like, I 1000% believe that if it's within your values to go to the party and be with everyone and to make those time, make those memories, you should not take them away. And I also believe that if you make some sort of nutritional choice where like your plate is balanced, there's no reason there can't be pizza on the plate. But we have to be aware of what goal we're trying to work towards, and also aware, if I'm being an absolute animal and eating like six slices of pizza and having like 4 beers, and I do that 2 days in a row, when I go back on Monday and we have a check-in call or whatever, it's gonna be like, "Yeah, I didn't feel great. I didn't feel great." I so it's like, I'd rather a client do that and then be able to have the conversation around, "Well, yeah, you could totally have the pizza. No one said you couldn't have the pizza." That's usually what comes up. "No one said you couldn't have this. At no point did I look at you and say, 'You can't eat X or Y.'" And then they're like, "Oh, yeah, you didn't say that." So when you hear that, Mike, like, how do you begin to, like, structure that conversation? Like, what would you say? Like, what do you think you would work through, or how would you work through that?
Yeah, I mean, I just find like I think a lot of the shame around certain food has been created by the toxic dieting industry of the past many years, and it's kind of cool to see many of us revealing the reality with food and showing that like, hey, it's just a bunch of ingredients and calories and things like that that either influence this process or that process. If you can eat what you want in the right amounts and not feel shame. And it's hard for people because they don't believe it because everyone else is running around saying that you got to eat clean, you got to do this. And I mean, there's meat only diets right now. It's ridiculous what comes out. And these people get extremely popular, more so than we will ever be, because we're not selling anything sexy or compelling. So people first, they don't believe that it can work. So we have to ground that level of thinking and show them why it works and how it works, and then just not feel shame around it. And I think that's the big thing. And we have to think, why do they feel shame around this stuff? Well, maybe when they ate it in the past, they had too much of it and they stored water the next day and glycogen and their scale went up, so they get that instant feedback that I made a bad decision. Then you can talk more about like averages of weight. It goes up, it goes down for a number of reasons. Nothing is immediate. You can't gain a lot of fat overnight. So I always just try to make people feel like it's just not a big deal. Unless it's every day, it's going to be okay. And it takes a while. You know, people need to experience that and learn for themselves, but that's pretty much it. It's not it's not as difficult as people think once they get that experience of the ups and downs and understand why it's happening.
Yeah, I think the big part of it, at least when I'm coaching folks, and I'm sure when you're coaching folks and your other coaches are coaching folks, it's this idea of like, we can't work towards perfection. We can work towards just getting a little bit better. Like a little bit better every day really goes a long way. I didn't expect for that to all rhyme, what just came out of my mouth, but it did. But you can work towards it, as in, like, yeah, you're gonna make progress and then you're gonna make a mistake, but you gotta learn from the mistake. Like you're gonna F up. Like there's just no way. There's no way. I don't know why. I'm not gonna name any influencers, but I don't know why we make it seem like we're not human. Like, I am incredibly human. I am the first to admit if I have a really, really bad day and I keep using pizza because it's like it's a food that I easily overconsume. And my mother-in-law is like a chef and she make it's pizza Friday every Friday, and we have like 3 pies in the fridge at all time. If I've had a really hard day and I don't go for a walk or talk to anyone and I've been in this basement where I'm working all day, like, it's so easy to just go in the fridge and grab the pizza for that instant satisfaction. I'm a nutrition coach, I'm a trainer. I've been doing this for almost, 12 years. Like, it's I'm so honest about it, and people, when I share that, people are just always so shocked. They're always like, "Oh, you would never eat that," or "I bet," or if I go to an event or something, people will, like, have their plate of food and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like, I don't normally eat like this."
It's
I'm
such
like,
a
"What are you
typical
talking?"
response.
I'm
It's what everybody says to us, and it's
Yeah,
hilarious. It's like,
and I
what do you think? I just eat chicken and vegetables? No
yeah,
way. That's not a way to live.
I'm like, "That double cheeseburger looks really good right now. Why do you think I wouldn't want that? Why do you think," like, it's unfair for fitness professionals to make it seem like they are holier than thou, and it's not helping. It's not helping someone feel human. tell people that they're humans and they're not robots for a reason. Um, how do you begin, Mike? How do you begin to help someone foster, like, basically what we're talking about is like self compassion? Like, is there like an entry point? Like, how do you feel like you can sort of shift to be like, all right, well, what we're learning right now is kind of like a data point. It's
That's the
not,
big thing, right?
you
That
know,
is the data. It's I saw a quote on a guy's laptop on a plane one time. I don't know where it originated from, but I loved it. It said, "Without data, you're just another person with an opinion." And it sounds
mm,
like a little too direct, so we can soften it a little bit, but all it really means is like we think a lot of things that aren't grounded in any information. And that's why I think if people track food for a little while, they can really learn a lot. And that's what I like to reveal to people. And I'm like, my style is kind of like a kick in the ass with a hug, right? Like I will be kind of direct with people, but I will understand where they're coming from, give them a little hug, and kind of just make them look at things from a logical point of view and not tell them everything, but just ask questions and have them reveal the reality to themselves and think of, am I being rational with this? And this conversation always comes up with like Diet Coke and stuff. Like people are like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you let people have that." I said, "Well, this person really really likes soda. The information on this stuff is pretty health neutral unless you're drinking gallons a day. This person now can drink soda on their diet and replace hundreds of grams of sugar a day with nothing. And you're telling me there's not a net benefit?" So I think we have like almost like this like low grade orthorexic behavior being promoted by the health industry on people. Like, I mean, I see it all the time. People tell me, like I said, I can't believe you tell people that's okay. Well, why is it not okay? No one really has the answer. And then a lot of these people, I call them health hypocrites. They'll tell me something is wrong. I'll go to their Facebook or Instagram page and they're eating cookies. So it's like, what, how do we move past this like morality with food and lack of information? It's like
mm.
we just reveal the data. We question ourselves as if we're not the ones making the decisions. Like I'll tell people a lot of times, like, what would you say to your friend in this case? You wouldn't tell them they're a piece of crap for making a poor food decision. Like, does it matter? Did it really go over your caloric need that much? No, you're not doing it every day. And then people start to see, they're like, yeah, you're right. It isn't a big deal. Well, yeah, you've been told it was a big deal for 30 years. It's no wonder you think it is, but I want to make you think differently now.
Oh, it's so big. Like, I think not enough people are aware that it's a spectrum.
Mm,
Like, that's really what it is. Folks are not aware it's a spectrum, and also folks aren't aware that if we do, let's say we are using calories, right?
right.
We're teaching our clients that. For some clients, they might not,
Mm.
we might not be in a place to learn that, and other clients, yeah, I want to learn. They're ready for it right now. You never give like a single definitive. You can give a definitive number, but usually it's in between two ranges, because then you have wiggle room, as opposed to saying, okay, this person is messing up a lot, we have to throw everything out we're doing. Right? There's a spectrum. There's like 250 calories up or down, maybe more, depending on the person's specific goals. And that's because, yeah, calories do matter, but also the fact that you are going to have events on the weekend, the fact that you are going to go to your kid's ice cream social and there's going to be ice, right? You don't want the person to feel like I can't participate in any of these memories or any of these things or demonize it. So it's like there's a spectrum. Same thing with the Diet Coke conversation. It's like you have folks like Dr. Mark Hyman who say, yeah, it's going to trigger an insulin response and you're going to die, right? It tricks your body. You can't trick your body.
No,
Your
he
body
just
is,
this is my gripe with people like that. They make things up and then they're so popular that everyone believes it and spreads it. And then it makes us look like the crazy ones.
yeah, yeah.
I I,
And,
I hate
and,
it.
and there's so many out there, and I'm not going to give more space for that, but I am going to say that it's like No, the person you're right. You're 100% right. It's like, yeah, they switch from Coke to Diet Coke. And when Diet Coke is really good, maybe some days they're like, you know what? I want to try like a flavored seltzer water. Oh,
Yeah.
you know what? That's really good. You know what? I just want plain seltzer water. Okay. After a few months of that, they're like, you know what? I'm gonna have some water with some fruit in it or some
Mhm.
lemon in it, and now I'm having water. Right? It's like the person who only drinks coffee. It's like, let's have a water with our coffee. Oh, great.
Yep.
Right? So it's like it's like people underestimate how important these small things are. I think, Mike, when we talk about, you and I are aware of this, but for the end user or the client or the human being who's on the other end of this podcast, like, I'm going to be fully transparent. I'd rather see someone go for the low hanging fruit, have a higher consistency rate than assign something that feels like I can't do this.
Yeah.
Like, if we're giving too much of the I can't do this so the person can feel like they're doing the harder thing so they feel like it's more worth their time, the lower the adherence is, the lower frequency of someone continuing coaching. Like, someone needs a win. Like, you
Oh, yeah,
need
yeah.
you
Yep.
need a win. It won't work without it,
That's what the
right?
restrictive diets, like, they kill me because I don't think they're really whoever's creating them, right? They're not really thinking of people applying these behaviors outside of a couple weeks. Like,
Yeah,
who is the biggest proponent of keto diets? People in the first couple weeks. After that, they realize, "What am I doing? I can't do this. This is insane." And we're over here like, "Did you know you actually don't even have to do that?" So it's like, how do we all but it's hard to convince people of things when they've been trained by the other side, and it's just like everyone has to realize all these delicious foods. The biggest issue with them is they're delicious and they're easy to overeat, and that's why they're demonized. Not because they're a specific ingredient, but because it's a lot easier to overeat cookies and potato chips than it is broccoli and chicken.
yeah, yeah,
That's it.
yeah. It's like when someone says and they say, like, I have a sweet tooth or I'm addicted to sugar, and we talk about it, and I'm like, okay, so you're not freebasting lines of sugar at your
Mm.
kitchen table. You're good. You're fine.
Yep, yep.
You're
It's
fine.
just
Like,
delicious. Yeah,
it's
that's it.
delicious. It makes sense. It's the combination of things. And again, for the folks out there who practice, like, if it fits your macros, they can honestly tell you that, like, if you eat Twinkies and Diet Coke, you'll definitely lose weight still. It's because you're
Yeah.
just not getting a calorie surplus. Like, I'm not telling folks to go out there and eat Twinkies and soda for
Right.
every meal, but I am saying there are people out there who do that and it works. So it's this strange place. It's this strange place to exist when you kind of feel like you're beating the drum of, let's have, like, health promoting behaviors. Let's
Yep,
have
yep.
let's have consistency in that.
And I think
And
the health
yeah.
promoting behavior is eating some of that stuff. I
Mhm.
think it's extremely unhealthy in terms of your mental state to go through life and avoid all these things. So when someone says to me, "How can you allow that?" I'll say to them, "How can you not allow it? If you're not allowing it, you're not understanding the life of humans." And that to me is probably the biggest foundational principle of what we do, is just thinking of, here are the rules of nutrition. How can someone follow them? And there's not that many rules, right? It's like I said, eat the right amount, have mostly nutrient dense foods, don't overdo all the processed stuff to put yourself in a caloric deficit and lack nutrients, and you're probably fine. I think there's just so much misinformation out there that I just want to get rid of that garbage for people. I just want to make this so much easier. And it's almost like everyone is kind of having or creating this like health hobbyist mindset where like they'll listen to like 6 hours of health podcast stuff a week. And I'm like, why are you that stuff is not fun. You don't need to listen to all that stuff. Listen to stuff like this once and be done. And they're subscribing to all these crazy influencer podcasts that are making us overthink everything. Health is not just what you put in your mouth, it's how you live your life. If you're moving, you're reducing stress, you're active, eating decently, you're going to be fine. You don't have to worry about skipping breakfast and a Diet Coke and a cookie and all this stuff. It's such nonsensical information to make people fear that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I think a part of it, if I put myself in the other person's shoes, is like, well, if I can learn as much as I can, then maybe I will find the magic bullet. Maybe I will
Yeah.
find someone's definitely gonna have the answer for why none of the other things have worked, and it's gonna be easy. Like, I think that's a part of it too, is like it has to be easy.
Yep.
Like, it has to be easier than what I'm doing. And in part, kind of what you and I are talking about, it is actually easier than what you're currently doing. It's just that it takes time. And I think that's the scary part. It's like, oh, it's gonna take time. Hmm.
Yeah, you're right about that. People are looking for everyone's like, well, we don't really understand this or that. It's like, well, the human body isn't necessarily the deep ocean or outer space. Like, those things are confusing to us. We know how people can be healthier and lose body fat. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole much more. We will discover the little things here and there, right? But like the longevity movement right now, it's like, what is the research based on? Single cell organisms that did such and such when you put something in a petri dish and then they take it and they say, well, humans should do this. Well, why? Now that stresses them out to the point where they're unhealthy. So, how ironic is that? In the quest for ultimate health, we stress ourselves so much worrying about the little things that we don't even do the good enough thing. We can't sleep at night now because we ate something at 8:07 p.m. and we're worried that it's going to add body fat to us. And now we sleep an hour less. It's so fascinating to me, and so like I'm always thinking so much more big picture, right? Like, all right, so you missed a workout, you overate, you did this. Who gives a crap? You're gonna be fine.
Yeah, I think, and again, I think for a lot of those podcast or even follower Instagram folks and stuff, like it's unfair in a regard because maybe the person's intention is to actually help. Like maybe that is
Yep.
their thing. Maybe they're not looking to get a bunch of people in a program or to maybe necessarily like boost the sales of their book.
Yep.
Maybe it's like an altruistic, they're like, I had X or Y happen in my life and I want someone else to not have it happen. The thing that stinks is they're not scientists. They're not people coaching other people too.
Yep.
That's the thing. It's like, yeah, what you're doing, sure, you're distilling down some research, but you're not going out and you're actually trying it within people. Or what you are saying to try within people, you can't actually see for another 50 or 60 years. So you're kind of guessing. You're
Yep.
guessing. So yes, I will go out and I'm going to touch the receipt that I am given. It's not going to the material on the receipt isn't going to cut my life shorter. Like, right? There's all of this confusing information. So, Mike, I think a good question, kind of a big question would be like, if someone comes to you and they have all of this information and they just want to start to be able to lose weight per se, that because that's kind of like your wheelhouse, right? With the folks that stronger you. What would be like the one piece of advice or the one thing that you can give them that's kind of like anyone can do this? Because when it comes to the other details, yeah, they're going to be more specific for that individual person. But what do you think it would be?
Yeah, so my like go-to piece of advice for someone that maybe wants to lose fat is it's quite controversial, but it's try to stop snacking. And people are like, "Oh, well, there's healthy snacks." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, let's think of snack culture, right?" And I might get the stats wrong, but I think based on some research, it may be Americans are snacking and getting like 50% of their daily calories from snacks. So imagine if you could reduce that a little bit. And to me, it's not just that snack foods are typically just like the high carb, high fat, sugary, crunchy, salty things. It's the behavior of snacking that when you snack, you're probably doing it because you're not really full. So you can have like more hearty meals with maybe more protein, more fiber via vegetables and fruit, and that can suppress your hunger throughout the day and limit your snacking. And now snacking is often done mindlessly. A lot of people who say, and this is the biggest thing with data, right, is the whole if you don't have data, you're just another person with an opinion, is you might say you're not eating a lot because you're not sitting down having meals and you're not perceiving all those mindless calories you're having via snacking. So if someone wants to lose weight and doesn't really want to worry about too much stuff, just try to stop snacking because your snacks are probably not protein. So if you stop snacking, you're not missing out on protein. I would tell you to add it to your other meals. You're just probably reducing a lot of extra calories that are relatively expendable. Yeah, you might get a moment of pleasure from it, but is it worth the frustration for another 20 years? So if you don't want to track a bunch of stuff and you don't want to skip all these foods that you really like, just try not to snack as much. And to do that, you really do have to look at yourself as if you're not you, right? Where am I snacking? When is it happening? It's probably happening when you're distracted in some way. You're either on your computer, you're on your cell phone, you're in front of a TV or a movie, or you're in your car. So think of those things. Think, where am I distracted and where am I eating? Am I finishing my kids' plates? These are the things, right? And this is why there's so much controversy over like calorie counting because people say it doesn't work because they're not actually doing it. They're miscounting calories. They're not catching where they're coming from. So this tip of don't snack adds up a barrier that people aren't getting over anymore. It puts up a blockade of all these expendable calories that are doing nothing but providing a moment of joy for people. So I'm not saying you don't or you should never ever ever snack. I'm saying for the average person, if I'm able to give one piece of advice, it's just watch your snacking. I bet you it's higher than you think. Don't feel bad about it, but identify it and watch how easy this stuff can become.
Oh, that's such a good piece of advice, and I agree with you. I think a nice way, because sometimes folks get like confused. Okay, well, what's I just define a snack as anything you're eating that's not a meal. Like if
Yeah.
you're not having a typical meal, that means like the extra portions. That means if you grab a handful of cereal. That means if you grab M&Ms off a coworker's desk, like it counts. It all technically counts,
Yep.
and I agree with you on like, yeah, some folks don't calorie count, and that's cool.
Yep.
I don't have all of my clients do that if they're not ready for that yet. But what we will do is like a video, a photo food diary, or
Yep.
they just write down what they're eating and then when they were eating it and why they were eating it. Like, oh, this was my meal. This was because I just grabbed it, right? That it's just calorie counting is just a level of awareness. So if we
That's
can,
the biggest thing. That's
right?
why I'm a fan of like counting for people because it forces the education.
Hmm.
Because I still worry that there's people out there that are like sending pictures and doing food diaries and things like that who just mentally don't track some stuff. So
Hmm.
that's why I give them the barriers of like, watch the snacks, watch the meals out, watch the liquid calories. Because people don't understand that it's very weird. Like we're all as humans, we're all kind of weird, right? We're like, "Oh, I didn't eat anything." Yeah, you didn't eat, but you got drunk or you basically went to Starbucks and got a cupcake in a cup with caffeine. That's some of the macros and calories of these things. And
Yeah.
people don't it doesn't register.
Yeah.
So they say and it's info aversion. If they don't log it, it never happened. And then
Yeah.
what happens with us? We don't see the results and we're like, "What the heck is going on?" And then we have to get granular and say, well, maybe it's not that they're lying, it's that they just don't know because we're not designed to pay that close attention to food. Like it's just automatic. There's all these mechanisms inside us that's like eat, eat, eat. I don't want you to die. Eat, eat, eat. But we've passed that threshold. Now we're going the other way. So how do we block those things? We identify where it's coming and we don't feel bad about it. And we stop BSing ourselves if we're
Mhm.
not getting the results that we think we should be from the behaviors we're actually not doing.
Oh, yeah. That's a really that's a really big point because it's also like for me, typically the people who come to me, they usually mentally, sometimes they just aren't in a space where if I'm like, okay, here are the calories we're looking at, right? It's why I'm such a big fan of like,
Mhm.
I'll know the calories, I'll know the hand portions that we're using, and also the macro breakdown. So it's like, okay, you can't deal with that. Let's try just focusing on protein for this week or the next 2 weeks. And this is how many hand servings it is. If you
Yep.
have the brain space, let's weigh it. Like, it's like we have to see that there's a different point and that person works up. I choose to view, for me personally, I just choose to view it as calorie counting is a skill. We have to
Yep.
take the steps to get to that skill. So if a busy mom of like four comes to me and she's got like brain fog and she can barely, she's just trying to keep the ship afloat. Like if I go, okay, now we're going to measure and count everything, and they're just like, what? Whereas opposed to like after like 2 months, if they're seeing progress and they feel like we notice that there's a consistency and they're used to like doing their hand portions, it's like, all right, we're just going to add a next step. Now for your protein this week, we're gonna try weighing it. And here's why we're gonna do X or Y, right? So it's like, again, there's a sliding scale, and I
Yep.
feel like it gets lost. It's because everything is a tool. Everything is a tool. It's just the main purpose is I want to educate someone so they
Yep.
feel like they have this understanding. Because when you're informed, you become empowered. And when you become empowered, you're like, I'm going to advocate for myself. I'm going to figure
Yep.
this out. So it's
Yep.
it's a really cool game to get to play, you know.
One of my favorite things is having people weigh peanut butter just so they can realize that they've never actually had a portion of peanut butter. It's I mean, I've had people tell me, "Man, I finally started weighing versus scooping with a spoon, and I realized I was eating 3 times as much." It's wild out there.
It's insane when you actually do look at
Yeah.
serving sizes and then you do look at like weighing things. Because also technically, even if we, let's say even if we were using like something like tablespoon, a proper tablespoon, not a
Mhm.
spoon you pull from the drawer,
Yeah.
because even if you put a spoon on a table, it is not a tablespoon.
Right, right.
So like if we were to even do that and someone was to go the measuring route, regardless if they hit the proper grams, they would still be consuming far less than the actual table, the spoon
Right.
they were pulling out, right? So it's like, again, it's like if we actually did, and you only have to do it once to realize that, like, oh, that serving size, I'm actually good. I'm actually full from that. That actually covers my toast or covers whatever and then some.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, if I just take it in that context, it's like, it's not that it's bad. It's just that in that form, you're going to overconsume way more. I'm speaking from experience. I have definitely overconsumed on
We
those
all do
things.
it.
It's just
Yeah.
it's just because it's one, it's delicious. Two, it's something quick to grab. Three, we think, unfortunately, that it's like a great source of protein. So we're like, oh, I'm good for my. So it's like we have to
Yeah.
look and understand, like, oh, wait a minute, the back of the label is going to educate me. And then if I add another layer to that
Right.
education, I'm gonna be solid. Like I'm gonna be so solid. It's gonna make. I'm not gonna be afraid of it anymore. I'm gonna feel, again. It's that level of empowerment.
And there's this other theory I have too with like people that identify foods as good or bad. If they eat a good food, there's something subconscious that tells them they don't have to track it.
Oh yeah,
It's like if they eat like, I don't know, like peanut butter without all the additives, right? If they have like a natural peanut butter, they're like, oh, it's just peanuts, maybe a little bit of salt. They eat it like yogurt and they're like, well, it's a good food. So it doesn't my body doesn't process the good calories like it does the bad, which we know is nonsense. But yeah, so it's like, especially like olive oils and things. They just douse their vegetables in oils and they don't track the oil in any way, and they might have added 400 calories.
yeah, yeah. It's always interesting. It's like I figured out that a teaspoon of olive oil will coat the pan to make your eggs. Where in the past it'd be like, let's do a tablespoon, and then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I'm gonna cause a house fire. I don't understand. So it's like you can experiment and you get to figure it out. But it's like it's really hard if we take it back to like looking at diet culture like extreme. It's like, well, then you have a a program like something like Weight Watchers, where it's like avocados are 0 points. Like, it's like,
It's just
have as
ridiculous
much
to
as you
me.
want. So it's like, I get where it's coming from because it's like, yeah, start having healthy fats as a but their calories still exist in everything that you're eating.
Right. And
So if you
it's like no
right,
one creating those diets are anticipating the behaviors that gradually change. So yes, okay, someone starts and they eat half an avocado, not the end of the world. They don't track it, doesn't count. Then they graduate to guacamole that they're dipping maybe a vegetable in. Okay, no big deal. Then they graduate to going out for Mexican food and they do chips and guac. And because it's a combo, they don't even think of it as separate foods and it's a free food. And this stuff happens. These are real stories. Like I've seen clients of ours telling me this is exactly what happened. So it's like I don't just make it up. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
people go from avocado to guacamole with vegetables to chips and guac and none of it ever counted and they can't figure out why they don't lose weight. It's because all these mystery calories are coming in and not being accounted for.
yeah. That's why the concept of good and bad
Yep.
calories is ridiculous because
Yep.
it's just they're calories, and there's nothing bad with calories. It's just how much we're consuming, when we're consuming, and what we're choosing to
Yeah.
consume.
It's like
S
it's like money. It's like, yes, you could buy silly crap with your money, or you can buy the more economical stuff. So if you're looking to spend your calories, see how you can get more of a thing, right? Vegetables, lean proteins. We're not saying those things are inherently just better than the cookie. We're just saying you get more of it for the same dollar. So if you want to stay full and satiated, maybe you spend your caloric cost on that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just always interesting to look at it that way. So, Mike, before we wrap things up, I have a question. It's what I've been asking folks. If you could go back, let's say go back to when you first started randomly coaching people. I know you started coaching someone at it was, I think they were like a CrossFit gym owner or something, and they asked
Mhm.
you for a little bit of help. What would be one piece of advice that you know now that you would give to yourself then? Not to change anything, just to let someone know.
I think at that time I was probably a little bit deeper into like nutrient timing than I am now. And I would influence people to eat carbs and proteins and fats in specific times around workouts because technically the science says like yeah, protein and carbs before, after, fats away. And I think it would give another layer of rules to people that were harder to do long term that would impact eating the right amount. So one of my big things now is like, okay, we know that scientifically speaking, for someone that wants to also perform their best, maybe they should do this. But if we give them that information and it prevents them from eating the right amount, that is now bad information. So I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice I would give my earlier coaching self is while these things are important at times and scientifically correct, we have to make sure that it makes sense for the person. And I don't remember when I really realized that or learned it, but I think just over time, seeing a lot of people that say, hey, I work out at 5 a.m., which, sidebar, I think is crazy. I couldn't do it. But some people do it, right? They say, I work out at 5 a.m. What do I eat before? And for a little while there, I think I was telling people have some protein and carbs before. And then I started realizing, well, crap, for them to even kind of utilize that, they might need to wake up at 3:30 a.m. That's silly. Then you learn digestion a little bit more and you realize that people are plenty fueled from what they did the day before. And food is not a battery that you put in your body and you just go. So thinking of that and having people eat at 4 a.m. or whatever means they couldn't eat at 7 because they ran out of food for the day. So I realized that late night snacking scenario and hunger, it's much more important to handle that well than it was to try to fuel a workout that was already fueled.
Hmm.
And that's where I like to think like I tend to get like a lot deeper than people tend to ask on some of this stuff, but I really think of food as like it is complicated. And if you're supposed to eat the right amount, but you can't do it because you tried to follow a better rule, then it's just not a good idea. So,
I appreciate the detail you went into on that because I think it's how for folks out there who are looking for nutrition coaching or working with someone, Mike and the folks at Stronger You are possibly the best in the game. That's why they've worked with so many people. Not because they know the science or they have an understanding of that, but because they've worked with so many people. As same with any coach you want to work with or any coach you follow on social media. You know, Ben Bruno puts it really well. He's like, if you see someone doing a crazy workout, there's no way that they're probably giving that to their client. And if they
yeah,
are, they've clearly only trained like two people. Like, you have to understand that when we talk about multi levels to a skill or we talk about making things easier, it's because we've worked with enough people to realize that you're not all the same. Like,
yeah,
you're not the same. I'm not the same. Mike's not the same. None of us are the same. So it's not fair sometimes to say, got to follow nutrient timing.
yeah.
You gotta look at eating windows. You have to look at max fiber intake. You need to be hitting this all the time. It's like, well, yeah, that would be great if, I lived in a metabolic ward and
Right.
people were it
And I think
doesn't always work.
a lot of the issue is people don't understand, like, okay, the science says this, but when you have to distill it down and have the average person do it, it's it's no longer doable. It's just so complicated. So all this information and all these like coaching books and all these nutrient science books, like even the best stuff that comes out, it's with the assumption that someone can do it. And that's the missing piece, I think, that many coaches, and we see it all the time with the new coaches, right? They're like, my person is just not listening to me. It's like, well, what did you think was going to happen? You gave them 19 rules to follow, which scientifically maybe were correct to a point, but they can't do them. So get rid of the 18 and go to the one. Watch them do that. Then they'll see success and you'll realize all that other crap is just sprinkles on the top.
Yeah. I like to say that really it's like a plug and check kind of game when it comes to
Yep.
nutrition. It has to be because you could give one person this one specific cue, it works amazing for them. You give another person a
Yep.
specific cue or task to try, and they end up coming back and they're like, this was horrible. So you have to use outcome based decision making
Yep.
for anything you're doing, whether that be personal training, whether that be nutrition. Like, you have to see. Uh, Science doesn't lie, but humans don't lie. They are their own individual being. That's the whole point of
Yeah.
it. Uh, I think this is a good place to wrap things up, Mike. I want to say thanks again for being here. And for folks who are hearing the podcast for the first time because you're a big fan of Mike and Stronger You, thanks for checking this out. It would be a big help if you left a 5-star review so more folks can hear this, particularly if you found it helpful. Try to share it with someone. You never know. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Mike?
No, Chris, thank you. Just again to reiterate my big point is if you want to lose fat and you don't want to try too hard, just try not to snack so much. It can be that simple. I may put us all out of business, but that's okay.
That's awesome. All right, everyone. Well, go do great things because you can.
All right, thanks.